Hello, everybody. Welcome. We will just give it a couple more minutes to see if there's a few more people that join us. We'll just start at 3:01.
Exactly.
Exactly. Mirry, in the meantime,
Yes.
the Founders Connect thing, it was good, and actually lots of people got there despite the strikes.
Oh, good. Well, I was sad not to be there, but it's just too far away, and I think it was logistics were just not going to play ball.
No, I mean they were just people who commuted like me on the train into London Bridge or Waterloo and could walk or bike.
Yeah.
So.
Good. Oh, well, I'm pleased it went well.
Yeah, much smaller amount, but still okay.
Yeah. Good.
Right, it is 3:01. Let us commence. So thank you very much to everybody that's joined us. My name is Jenny. I am the managing director here at Dragon Argent, and we are a professional services firm. So we support SMEs, so scale up startups with any problems they have. We've got a team of lawyers, tax accountants, business advisors, and we help them. We get to know your business and we help you solve whatever problems you have as they come up. Now, one of the things which, a conversation which has led to why we're here today, was we were looking at B Corp ourselves, and I joined a webinar that Mirry and team ran and thought how incredibly useful it was. I learned a lot. So we thought, part of the reason of part of the way that we deal with and we look after our clients is we're not just all about talking about tax and law and advisory stuff and finance. Actually, there's a lot of other problems that lots of our clients have, and where we can, if we can bring some interesting friends to talk and to help our clients or our contacts solve those problems, then that would be great. So without any further ado, let me pass you on to Mirry, and then if we could do quick intros first. So if we do Mirry, then Mia, then and then we'll go around that way, then Guy, and then we'll do a bit more of an introduction, Mirry, to your business. So firstly, just who you are, please.
So thank you very much. Really good to be here. So I'm Mirry, Christie, and I'm the founder of Be Able consultancy advisory. Gosh, can't get my words out. Sustainability. So great to be with you. Thank you for having us. And I'll introduce my team.
So I'm Mia, I'm the head of impact at Be Able, which essentially means that I lead on all things client and project delivery. I've been in sustainability consulting for over 7 years now. So in the past, I was with EY, working with some of the world's biggest corporates on their sustainability agendas. And now at Be Able, we help kind of translate that into practical advice for SMEs on embedding sustainability into their businesses.
Okay, great. And last but not least, Guy.
Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, I'm Guy. I'm head of growth and client relations at Be Able. I've been working in the sustainability space for about 5 years now and have worked with around 150 organizations in that time, many of which were going on a B Corp journey. So have been in the B Corp space for a while and seen a lot of its value. So that's me.
Great, thank you. And I think, Mirry, so we know each other having crossed paths with connected because of the roles that we have and various values and things which align nicely. So one of the things that a lot of our clients are founders of their own business. Before we go into the mechanics of B Corp, can you just give us a little flavour as to your journey? How have you got to the point to creating this business, please?
Yeah, of course. So I think when we first met, Jenny, one of the things that I really resonated with you is that you work with businesses, which I'm very familiar with. So I joined a startup business about 25 years ago. So I had firsthand experience of that journey and everything that involves. And working really as a marketing brand, kind of PR capacity, we built the business from kind of starting point with zero resources and money and not much time. Everyone was like, trying to kind of we grew the furniture business up to kind of 40 million turnover. And it was at that point that I was involved with investors and private equity. And that's when sustainability became a conversation, because when we got to the kind of exit plan, it was like, who's doing sustainability? We were a small leadership team focused on sales, operations, growing the business. And we didn't have sustainability at that point. This was a few years ago as part of us. So, I put my hand up to the investors and said that I'd help them with some of the questions they wanted. And therein was the start of my journey to sustainability. And when they sent me off to kind of learn what to do was corporate sustainability at NYU, at the Center for Sustainability in America. And I came back going, wow, this is so complex. This is so full of jargon. How is anybody meant to understand how to do this, let alone when you're a business which has limited time, limited resources, limited budgets, but businesses wanting to do the right thing and to be more responsible. So I learned on the job how to do B Corp, how to create strategies, how to implement them. And then it inspired me to set up Be Able, because I felt that, there is a need for smaller businesses. They have an appetite to wanting to learn, wanting to know how to do things. And we are very flexible in our approach. So we just help to support businesses in terms of building out roadmaps or strategies, and implementing them, how to do it, make sure that it's communicated well, because I think a lot of people don't know how to do that. And along that journey, one of the things that we have ended up doing for working with people is B Corp, because it's been one of those certifications that some people don't know much about. Other people think that they want to. Investors come in and say, we'd like you to be B Corp, some businesses. So really understanding the value of that and helping businesses on that journey has become kind of where we've got to now. And as we've grown, the team's grown, and we just, focus on trying to be practical, efficient, and supporting businesses that perhaps don't have a dedicated person, because that's another expense that you might not need, but being able to kind of come to us and say, actually, I just need a light touch. Sometimes that might be one day a month, maybe one day a week, but how can you help us to build out what this looks like for our business so that we are moving forward in the most responsible way we can, and be very focused on the bits you can impact, and where you can add value to your business, and reduce costs where possible. So there is a kind of business piece around this, which means it's not just a nice to have, it's actually critical to the running of your business. I guess we just sit alongside and support businesses with that.
It's amazing though, isn't it, that if you think about where you started and then going to NYU to learn all about it, and then how the whole world has changed, and this, it's such a topical and always it's been an important topic, but it does feel like there is a lot more, rightly and much needed focus on it, and interest from businesses to do something actively, towards it.
Yeah, and I think becoming part of your day-to-day. So it's not a bolt-on. Sustainability means different things to different people, but it's actually, what does it mean to your business, and how do you make that part of everything you do on a day-to-day basis? So I think that's kind of how I see it.
I do remember a role that I had in a big business a long time ago, probably it was when I was a graduate trainee. In one of the roles, I was in the sustainability team for about 3 months, and I was stationed at the bottom of a set of stairs in one of the offices, and I had to stand and encourage people to use the stairs rather than the lift, and track how many people did it. So I feel like it's come a long way since then.
That must have been, and then you were out. You were like, that's it, I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah, I was like, no, I'm not sure about this. Well, so in terms of one of the, I always forget to say this part at the beginning of webinars, but we will, this is being recorded, and there is a Q&A bit at the bottom, a chat thing and a Q&A. I don't really know why there's both, but anyway, there are both. So please feel free, anybody who's on the call, to stick questions in, and we'll answer them. We'll answer them as we go. So stepping back, so that's explained a bit about the Be Able and your journey, Mirry. Can you, just for those on the call who don't know what B Corp is, could you please just give us a quick overview of what it is and why people should do it? What are the benefits?
It would be remiss of me not to let Guy, who spent many, many years with a focus on B Corp, to take this one on, because it's his definite area of expertise, and succinctly will probably explain it.
Thanks, Mary. Happy to go over this for those who are fairly new to B Corp. So I mean, at its very core, B Corp is a movement. That's how it started. It started as a movement of businesses who wanted to use business as a force for good. And so it's over the years since it started, it's grown, and there's now quite a large global community who are focused on creating a sort of more inclusive, more equitable, and a regenerative economy. As part of that movement, B Lab developed a framework, which is what businesses use essentially. So the framework is there to kind of rigorously assess businesses' impact. And that framework is called the B Impact Assessment. So if you've ever looked into B Corp and you've set up an account on the portal, that is where you would see all of the impact areas and all of the questions. The backbone of this is the B Impact Assessment. And then lastly, as well as a framework, in order to recognize businesses that meet that really stringent criteria, there is a certification. So if you improve enough to meet the right criteria, then you can certify as a B Corp. And those are the businesses that you see with the logo on their branding or on their website and that type of thing. But I think it's important to say that you can leverage the B Corp framework without having to be a certified B Corp. And there's hundreds of thousands of businesses out there who simply just use the framework as a guide for their sustainability journey. And then a certification may be a milestone on that journey, but a lot of businesses are just leveraging the framework because it is a ready-made kind of framework to guide your sustainability journey.
Okay, so that explains why it was created and what it kind of looks like. So the reason that you did your webinar back whenever it was many moons ago, which I joined, thank you again, was that the world is changing slightly, the rules are changing, and it is becoming different. Can you tell us why things are changing and what the specific impact is to anybody who's, well, I guess there's two different ways. Firstly, why are they changing? And then what's changing? That'd be great.
In terms of the actual
so all the new rules, the new standards,
the B Corp standards, yeah, I can take us through that. So the B Corp framework has been around for a while now, and it has gone through various iterations. The actual B Impact Assessment itself has gone through various iterations. The reason behind that being, as you mentioned in your old role, where you were sort of counting people going up the stairs, sustainability is continually evolving, and therefore what is best practice 5 years ago might then become the norm, and the bar raises and best practice becomes something new. And so B Lab want to make sure that whatever standards they have continually evolve in this nature, the bar keeps raising, so that once something becomes best practice or becomes the norm, then the bar raises. So that's one of the reasons why the standards are changing. Another reason is that they kind of want to provide some more clarity on what it means to be a B Corp. In the previous, I won't go into too much detail now because we might cover this later, but in the previous version of the standards, you used to have to accumulate points in order to become a B Corp. So they had a threshold that was 80 points. And the questions within the assessment were weighted with various different point scores. And so you just had to get a combination of things that you were doing, actions that you were doing within your business to achieve the right level of points to hit 80, and then you could certify as a B Corp. I think they realized that was could be quite ambiguous sometimes, because you'd have certified B Corps who are doing different things but were all certified. And so they've tried to make it a bit more black and white. And what they've done is introduced a number of minimum standards across the board that every single business has to be doing in order to become a B Corp. Previously, you could be performing quite well in some areas and not so well in other areas and still be a B Corp. Now they've introduced a sort of blanket minimum standard that everyone has to meet. So they've tried to make it a bit more clear and transparent, a bit more black and white about, if you do this, you are a B Corp. If you don't do this, you can't be a B Corp, essentially. And then lastly, the kind of regulatory landscape in sustainability, again, is always evolving and always changing. There are always new standards being introduced by either governments or sort of within the EU. And so they've tried to align the new B Corp standards more with other global reporting frameworks to try and make it easier for businesses who are having to adhere to these different reporting standards. If they also want to do B Corp, they've made the standards more in line with those, and just to try and simplify for businesses.
Okay, so because I think there was, I mean, obviously there was some press coverage a while ago, wasn't there, about how is it possible that a couple of these big companies have got this B Corp, and that must have been because, as you said, historically you didn't have to have the right, you didn't have to have a minimum standard. So one of the questions, we've got a question which I know is part of what we're chatting about now in terms of the mechanics of certification. It used to be every 3 years. Is that still the case?
It's slightly changing. So previously you would certify and then you would be on a recertification cycle every 3 years.
Yeah.
And when that was the case, there was never any obligation that you had to improve your score. So a part of the ethos of B Corp is continuous improvement, but it wasn't something that was obligatory. It was kind of it was encouraged. They've now really baked that into the new standards. And so when you certify for the first time on the new standards, you'll be certifying what they call year zero. So that's the kind of first year that everyone is going to be certifying on the new standards. Then there will be additional set of requirements that you have to meet at year 3. And then there's going to be another set of requirements you have to meet at year 5. So it's not necessarily recertification in the sense, it's a new set of standards that you're going to have to adhere to after 3 years, and then even more stringent set of standards after 5 years to show that you're on that continuous improvement journey and that you're not just kind of staying stagnant and remaining at the kind of level that you were when you first certified. Beyond that 5-year point, there is not as much clarity. B-Lab haven't released that much clarity yet because that is going to be 5 years down the line for everyone, because everyone's starting from year 0 now. But yeah, that's what the kind of cycle is going to look like now. Okay, so and so stepping back a bit, so Mia, I think this might be one for you. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I mean, there's 3 of you, and you all know so much about this. So I will see if it is, or if not, then I will ask you something else. In terms of the overall, so if we go back a little bit to the whole point of B Corp, what are the buckets? We've talked about the different sections you need to look at, and now you need to have minimum standards. What are the different areas? What are the different things that this includes? What are the different sections, and what's the difference now that under the new standards in each of the sections?
It's a good question. A tricky one to kind of talk to without a slide, but I will do my best to explain it to you. So previously, I think I mentioned this, there were 5 different impact areas. And with the 5 impact areas, they perhaps weren't always really clear in terms of what you would cover. So you would have topics that related to things like suppliers sitting across different impact areas. So that made it quite challenging for businesses to kind of assign out responsibility for different sections. So the new standards have introduced a set of 7 impact topics, so an additional 2, and I will read them out so you've got them. Purpose and stakeholder governance, which kind of looks at how you operate as a business. So if you've got a clear purpose in place, do you bring stakeholders into your decision making, and do you track your social and environmental impact? Then we've got things like fair work, which is that B Corps need to provide good quality jobs, provide fair pay for their workers, and involve workers in shaping the workplace. The next one is justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, which is a real kind of shift from the previous standards. There's a lot more of a focus on justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion in this, in the new standards. And here it's really around demonstrating actions that you've got in place to build an inclusive workplace and support fairer communities. Then human rights, which again kind of lacks some specificity in the old standards, is its own impact topic in the new standards. And here it's around kind of understanding the human rights risks that are in your operations, but also in your supply chain. So working with your suppliers to help address any issues relating to modern slavery and human rights. Then we've got 2 environmental topics. One is around climate action, and here this is a really big shift. We're seeing a lot of our clients realizing that they've got to do a lot more in this space. So all B Corps will need to have a climate action plan, or kind of emissions reduction plan, whatever you want to call it, aligned with reducing emissions by 1.5 degrees. And they'll need to measure their emissions and set targets depending on their size. So a lot more action will be needed in this space. Then we've got environmental stewardship and circularity. This is where businesses need to take steps to reduce their impact on the planet, to use resources wisely, design for reuse, and buy materials in a responsible way. And this is kind of more probably an area that was more emerging for a lot of businesses as kind of a risk or opportunity area. But now what this will force businesses to do is really look at their practices, look at their operations and supply chain, identify where they are having impacts on the environment, and take actions to reduce them. So again, I think this is one of the areas that's probably been addressed a little less in the old standards, but now you'll see a lot more kind of robust environmental risk assessment. And then last is around government affairs and collective action. And this is where it's really around coming together as a B Corp community to create change together, be that through government lobbying or working as part of like collaborative groups to pursue positive environmental and social change. So it's a lot. Sorry, I know that's a lot of talking, but it gives you a sense of how holistic the standards are, but also it's really, really clear now which areas you need to be focusing on and what you need to be doing to become a B Corp.
And I think one of the things, certainly when I joined the webinar that you did, I know that you have some beautifully prepared and clear slides, which we'll share with everybody who's joined the call afterwards, so that you can read and you can see all of this. So that feels, I mean, it does feel really holistic. It feels amazing. I mean, you can imagine like the power of lots of businesses adopting this and doing this and focusing on all those areas. So part of me, having heard you talk through all of the 7 things, I mean, that's so exciting. The other part of me thinks that seems quite overwhelming. How on earth? How do I do that?
We definitely find that from a lot of the clients that, the clients we're speaking to, because it just looks like when you first look into it thinking, how are we going to find the time to do this, to prioritize this? What about, who has the expertise? Because the thing about it is that it covers so many different departments of your business. So sustainability as a whole, and whether or not you've got a plan already in sustainability, if you're going down the B Corp, and if you haven't got a plan and you go down the B Corp, you've got to find that person who would be able to kind of work through the different departments, as well as potentially having a day job, because that quite often is the case. Where do they, do they have any experience? Perhaps not. How do they get the leadership buy-in bit is quite a challenge quite often. It's like, how do you get everybody else on board? Because you may feel passionately, Jenny, for your business, but it needs to be a kind of everybody coming together to see if you can, how you can make it happen. And it's I think time and resources, I think it is a perception that is very complex. So, very often we see people start and then give up, because they kind of go, yeah, we're going to start, we're going to get going. And then they go, yikes, this is just a absolute massive task. It's a mammoth task. And how do you break it up? How do you assign accountability to the right places? Because it needs to share the load. So some of these are kind of challenges that we find, which is why people end up kind of talking to us, because they go, actually, we really want to do this, but we just need someone to hold our hand through it. And that's before you've even got to the kind of verification stage and all the rest of it, when you've got an analyst who's kind of crawling over everything you've completed and saying, can you show us how you do it? What do you do? Where's the evidence? That whole piece. But it's a massive organizational piece, but it's also, crossing so many different areas. I don't know whether Mia or Guy want to add to that.
I think you captured it well, Mirry.
Okay, let's go. So we've got a question from Tim. So all B Corps are supposed to publish an impact report. It's not policed by B Lab, and about 20 to 30% of B Corps aren't doing it. Do you think it should be mandatory?
I mean, this is another thing, as I mentioned earlier, about the continuous improvement that, again, with the impact reports, it's something that is encouraged by B Lab, but not, like I said, mandatory. At Be Able, we encourage all of our clients, B Corp or not, to publish an impact report, because we think it's the best way to communicate with your different stakeholders. it's the best way to be transparent about what you're doing well, but also where you're not doing well. Those are the favorite impact reports I see are the companies that are really transparent and say, these are the goals we've achieved. These are the goals we haven't achieved. This is why, and this is how we, this is what we're going to do about it. But to answer the question, I think that they should be mandatory. And I'm hoping that within the new standards, that B Lab will be a bit more stringent on businesses that haven't published an impact report, because it is transparency is part of what it means to be a B Corp. Everyone's scores are published online for everyone to see. And so I don't think there's any reason for a certified B Corp not to be publishing an impact report. It doesn't have to be 90-page document that no one reads. It needs to be something that's digestible for your employees, as well as your suppliers, as well as your customers, as well as someone who's new to your business. And that's what we try and do when we work with clients, is make it simple.
I have to say, I just endorse what Guy says is I think it should be mandatory, partly because I come at it also from a comms background, because that's my marketing and communication side is kind of where I come from. And I think my history of being able to communicate what you're doing, both internally to employees, because they need to be part of this, but also externally. And so often we find that sustainability might sit in a department, maybe it's sitting with HR or with operations, but the communications or the marketing team just don't talk about it. They're so busy just talking about, selling product or talking about the brand, but actually what they miss, and normally it's because they don't have the expertise to be able to talk about it. So what is it that they can talk about, which is non-risky, that they feel that's going to add the brand value and help increase customer engagement? But, with an impact report that clearly states, what you're doing, it's much easier for a marketing department to lift some of that and use some of that. So using terminology that is not greenwashing, that is kind of clear, that clearly talks about your progress, is clearly honest and transparent about what might not be. It's content that can be used in the business, whether that's, in a training for your employees, or whether it's communicating out into the kind of media. I personally feel that if people start talking about it more confidently about what they do, it gives them peer advantage, it gives them competitive advantage, it gives opportunity to perhaps open more doors to working with new customers or clients who may be interested in looking for a brand that is responsible. And actually that piece I see as a real opportunity that not many brands do well. And I always come back to the base that if you don't know how to talk about this confidently, an impact report is a really good way to start that piece.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the one that you've done for Click, and it's so visual. It's just a beautiful, clear, very inspiring bit of comms. So
I think it needs to be aligned. No one wants a 200-page document that you download and never read. You want something that feels big. What we do is try to make it really sit comfortably with your brand. So again, just making sure that it looks and feels and it speaks in the same way, so it just feels an extension of all your communications that you're doing, both, as I say, internally, and there is that bit that if you have investors, and I have had quite a bit of work of working with investors, and they want to be comfortable with what they want to be informed, they want to be comfortable, they need to know what's going on, and again, we have a investor of one of our clients, and they want, actually, ironically, printed copies of what we do, because they want to be able to show it around as part of a selling piece for the brand. So it becomes really a kind of core piece of brand material.
So yes, Tim, the answer is yes.
Yes. Where's the yes?
Yes. So Mia, so coming to you, in terms of, obviously, as head of impact, you'll see lots of people. I assume you'll speak to lots of people who will come and they'll get in touch and they'll want to do this. They'll want to go down this journey. What are the things? What are the kind of the pitfalls that you see, or what happens? What are the things to be aware of, I guess, if any of the people on the call are thinking about that? Are there any advice that you could give to anybody?
Yeah, I think it links in quite nicely to a few things already spoken about. So one of them is really kind of seeing B Corp as like a badge rather than really embedding it in the business. I think coming at it from you're not going to get there really quickly is a good approach to take. Like, give yourself the time, make sure that you've allowed enough time to really embed impact into your business. And then once
what sort of time are we talking about? Like,
it's so hard. That is such a difficult question. It really depends on if you've got anything in place. I mean, you can probably, I don't want to say a number, a year would be like really pushing it. But I'm particularly with the new standards, it's going to be trickier to rush through the certification process, because some of the requirements will require you to give evidence of having embedded actions already. So it will say things like, in your, I won't be quoting exactly, but in some of your top, your most important procurement decisions in the last year, show us evidence of how you've applied environmental considerations into those purchasing decisions. And that's not something that you can just
do overnight.
You've got to put, have those processes in place, be recording that information, and then have it ready to go for certification.
Okay.
So that with the new standards, it will be harder to kind of rush through. I think the old standards probably did allow businesses to quickly pull together policies and kind of a set of responses that would get you through the certification. Obviously, those that have it fully embedded would achieve a higher score, but it'd be harder. So that's definitely one of the pitfalls, is kind of leaving preparation too late. And I think we also, if you see people failing when you don't really include everyone across the business, if you have one team responsible, you're likely going to be missing a lot of areas, and it's going to be really hard to pull all of that information together. One of our clients is just going through verification at the moment, and I think they've got almost 200 questions across their business. Just to give you a sense of, for a small company, it's a lot of questions. And if you're only kind of one person and working in one team trying to answer all of those things, it's really hard, and you will inevitably miss things and make it harder. So I think starting off early, making sure you've got the right team in place, and finding people who are interested in the business as well. So people who will be really keen and engaged to drive forward the B Corp journey is really important. And then lastly, I think one of the things to be aware of is making sure you've really got buy-in from the top. But you don't want to be, it's not an easy certification to hold and maintain, and that's only going to get more challenging with the new standards. And so making sure that it really is something that your business is passionate about and you are kind of impact led. So making sure that you're going for it for the right reasons and you've got all of that buy-in for the leadership, because it's not something that you can just do 1 year and then forget about. It's something that really needs to be embedded into your broader business strategy.
And so you mentioned there the actual verification process. So I think so far we've talked a bit about what it is, where it came from, the new, the theory behind the changes in the new standards, bringing more transparency, bringing these minimal standards, and the breadth of, these 7 impact areas. We've said about, the importance of getting the right people in to help you go through that journey. What is the journey? The verification journey.
Take that one, Mia?
How do you do it?
Yeah.
Do you want me to take that one, Mia?
Yeah, over to you.
Sure. So the process that we recommend most of our clients to go through is sort of like a 3-stage process. The first one being complete the assessment, because you need to know and complete the assessment accurately. I think is probably the most important thing to say, because the first time you complete the assessment, that is where your baseline is going to be. And if your baseline isn't accurate, you don't then know how many improvements you need to make in order to meet those minimum standards. So
you also probably work out all the data. How much data do I know I need to have, but I don't have? So you'd work out from the start how many gaps have you got before you can even start.
Yeah. So having a really accurate baseline is the most important thing, because that's going to form the foundation of the rest of your journey. And it means that you don't either kind of invest in improvements or over invest in time and effort in improvements that you might already have in place. So once you're clear on what your baseline is and where your gaps are, that is then when you move to the second stage, which is draw up a plan for improvement, a roadmap for improvement, identify your gaps, identify which actions need to be taken in order to close those gaps, and identify who in the business needs to be responsible for implementing that improvement, essentially. Once you have the plan in place, then it's moving into the third stage, which is a kind of stage where a lot of our clients find it difficult, which is implementing those improvements. And the reason that some companies find that tricky is some of the improvements might be quite technical from a sustainability perspective, and they might just have never done it before. And so they kind of need someone to lean on. They may never have done a materiality assessment before, or they've never, measured their carbon footprint, that type of thing. So a lot of these can be quite technical and quite difficult to do if sustainability isn't your background or your expertise. So once you've been through a process of implementing those improvements and you're feeling confident about that you're complying with all the standards, that is when you would submit your assessment to B Lab for verification. Now, what used to happen is you would submit your assessment, you would pay the submission fee, and then you would enter a queue, and you would sit in that queue for what ended up being quite a long time when B Corp became really popular. Some companies were waiting 6 to 9 months before their application was even reviewed. That has now gone down, but what B Lab have introduced with these new standards is B Lab are no longer administering that process. So once you submit your assessment now, you're going to be assessed by a third party and not by B Lab themselves. And that's actually to comply more with some EU regulation, where in order to have a certification on your branding or on your website in the EU, the certification has to be administered by a third party. And so they're trying to be more in line with that. So that's as much as we know so far about the third party verification. We're still waiting on more details from B Lab. But what we do know is that B Lab will no longer be doing that process. So hopefully it means that they'll be able to use people with much greater capacity, meaning that the queue times will be greatly reduced, is what we're hoping.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, it does sound I think, Mia, go back to your point of having exactly the right people, having the buy-in at the top, that this is a journey. It's a long, this is not going to happen overnight, and get the right accountability, get the right people with the right skills, does sound really important. In terms of then the impact, I mean, obviously things have changed a bit with these new rules, and I don't really know how many B Corps there are in the UK at the moment. What sort of number and percentage of businesses are B Corp currently, and how do you foresee that changing, either more or less, over the future, over the next couple of years?
I think there's over 2,500 B Corps in the UK now, and it is the fastest growing B Corp community in the world.
Oh, right.
And I don't really see that changing. I mean, I think there seems to be a sort of atmosphere within the UK of companies wanting to do the right thing. And I think that demonstrated by the uptake of B Corp. Obviously, when something like the certification standards change, and there's a perception and a narrative that they're getting harder, and in some senses they are, but I think in other senses it's become more clear. It used to be a bit ambiguous. There is always a nervousness in change about, are businesses that are existing B Corps going to want to stay B Corp if it's becoming a lot harder? Is it going to put off new businesses looking at it if they're seeing things about it becoming more challenging? So whether the pace continues as it is, it's hard to say. But I think if the third-party verification means that capacity is greater and businesses can go through the process faster, we may see a large increase in B Corps in a shorter time frame, because one of the big things was the bottleneck of B Lab slowing down the certification process.
And will you be able to be the third-party verification people?
I'm not sure. I'm sure there are probably consultancies out there who have asked B Lab and looked into potentially being, but I would have thought that B Lab would, in the wanting to keep things consistent, would want to use one or two larger partners rather than multiple third-party verifiers all around the globe. That's what I think. I've got no clue.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
I did actually have a look this morning on the portal. I was just trying to see a bit more about that, and they do use the wording, they will partner with one or more assurance providers. So it does kind of seem like they are leaning more that way of having a fewer number of larger providers, but yet to be seen. I just wanted to add something to what Guy was saying there about the new standards. Obviously, businesses kind of potentially thinking that it's going to be a huge amount of work to stay a certified B Corp when you move to the new standards. And I think there has been a lot of media around how they are raising the bar, and which is very true, but a lot of businesses won't realize that they're already doing a lot in different areas that will help them kind of tick off some of those new requirements more easily. And we've had clients who think it's going to be a huge, huge task of work, but then as you actually go through and see what the requirements are, it hasn't ended up actually being particularly more work than it would have been before, or substantially less than that initially thought. So I would say also, if you are kind of a business who's at that decision point of, are we going to keep going with B Corp, it's really around making sure that you're looking at the standards for your business. So if you're a larger business, you'll have more stringent standards. If you're a smaller business, you'll have less that will apply to you and will be tailored for your business. So it's really important to actually go in and look and make sure that you're basing those decisions on the right kind of information and amount of work that will need to be done, because it might surprise you that you don't have as much as you might have thought. It's still going to be a lot of work, but not unachievable for a lot of businesses who already have all of those foundations in place.
And the scales, you mentioned there briefly, the scales. I remember this again from one of the very helpful slides, which we'll share after the call, about because it's both like, is it both employee size and revenue? Is it one or other? I can't remember.
Whichever, so it's based on two things, and it's whichever you hit the higher band on. So say you over the higher revenue, you'll go into that one even if you're on a smaller band for your employee number. And we really recommend to everyone who's kind of setting out on their B Corp journey that that's the first thing they check, because this is a change from the old standards. And we have seen companies where in the past they didn't look at revenue here. So it will mean that if you're a smaller business, you've got a smaller number of employees but a higher revenue, you will kind of have higher requirements placed on you than you would have in the previous model for applying that same structure. But yeah, just make sure to check and also
what are the numbers? What's the revenue number?
I think what's important to mention at this point, Mirry, as well on that is that B Lab do the revenue bands in USD. And so that can trip clients up as well, because if they're looking at their revenue in sterling, they might actually end up in a higher revenue band because it's in dollars.
You're a small if you're up to 10 million US dollars. You're a medium if you're up to 75 million US dollars, and then that's up to 250 employees. So it's really if you're a company operating in that kind of medium size headcount of 50 to 250 people, but you're doing over 75 million turnover, and then you're subject to the large requirements, that's where we kind of see businesses at that point of all of a sudden there's quite a few more actions than they might already have in place for their size. But we'll send the slides out afterwards, as you said, Jenny, and then you can have a look and make sure you know exactly where you are. But it is tailored to the size.
But it's reassuring though to know that though, because you know there's a common, there's a layer of common sense that actually small businesses, because obviously the whole point is to get people on this journey. So you'd have to judge the businesses accordingly to their size in an appropriate manner. So it's good that the scale is good, and actually 10 million, US dollar revenue. I mean, a lot of our clients are underneath, are beneath that and are beginning this journey. And I think we'll probably be really pleased to know that classifies them as small for the purposes of starting off on the right footing.
Yeah, and I think that the bit particularly for small businesses is by joining the movement, you get to collaborate with other B Corpers. There are various events, there's lots of things that you kind of pull you guys together. And I've certainly found it very refreshing, having been in a very competitive environment in an industry for many years, to actually be able to kind of pull brands together and companies together in the similar kind of industry that are actually working kind of together because of B Corp, and which I think has had some really nice human elements to it, which is which has been really strong. And the other thing I think that I'm seeing happening, which is if you for example you are a product brand, if you there are platforms and companies like John Lewis and for beauty it's Cult Beauty, who are bringing B Corpers together to help promote them. So that it may be an area in the shop or a discount for B Corp brands, or there's definite incentives, and in media spend and things like that, people are trying to find ways that can kind of incentivize people to make better purchasing decisions. So I think when you drill back to again the marketing perspective, it's like there is opportunity here. I think, for brands that keep it. And equally, the ones that decide not to keep it, it's going to be really interesting to see, because whether there are brands that decide not to recertify, and the impact of that normally is, you've got the certification across packaging, in marketing, all the across your website. So it's going to be, let alone PR. So it'll be interesting to see. I think there'll be more pressure for people to carry on with it than have to explain why they don't.
And cost. So cost wise, obviously changing all your packaging would cost a fortune. What are so for people embarking on the journey, what are the costs, the ongoing costs to being certified?
So there is a few costs from B Lab when you actually go to become a certified B Corp. Important to say, to set up an account on the portal, look at the framework, use the framework, is no cost. It's a completely free online IP that you can use as a guide for your sustainability journey. Once you actually take the decision that you want to certify, you would, I'm not sure if these costs are changing with the new standards. I'll double check that, and we'll share it in the slides that we share after. But you pay a submission fee when you actually submit your assessment to B Lab. I think that's around £250 to £300. You then used to pay a verification fee, which I'll need to check if that's continuing, because obviously the verification process is changing, and so I'm not clear on if that's staying. But then there is an annual certification fee that is paid to B Lab, which again is tiered based on your revenue size. So there's lots of different bands in that, and it ranges anywhere from £1,000 a year to £100,000 a year, depending on your size. But yeah, we'll confirm and share after if the verification fee is remaining, given that it's moving to third-party assurance.
Okay, yeah, that's really helpful. So just conscious of time, does anybody else have, Georgia, Tim, thank you for your questions earlier. Does anybody have any other questions for any of the team? Or else what we'll do is we'll just ask, I guess, well, just to finish on a couple of top tips for people if they are sitting here and looking at doing it. What would you recommend? Let's just see. Right, no more questions. So yeah, just to wrap it up, why should we do this? She says with a laugh.
I think my first thing would be to be really clear on why you want to do it. So are you doing it for the right reasons? Are you going to have people in the business who will buy into why you're doing it? Are you doing it for investors? So that clarity of are you doing it because you want to use it for commercial advantage or to build your brand image? So I would be clear on that. But I would also say to people, don't be overwhelmed. It is one of the most credible certifications out there, and it is growing. And I think if you have a desire in your business to be more responsible and to be mapping out the future of your business based on being a responsible business and being acknowledged for it, I think that that's a good enough reason for me. I think that's why you want to do it. I think it also, and which we haven't touched on, is people coming in to work for your business, potential recruitment, which is a lot of a cost for a lot of businesses. If you can be a B Corp business, it's more attractive for people to want to come to work with you, because they know that not only for you, but also just the conduct of the business is going to be something and that maybe aligns to your values. So I think there is a bit which if you can cut recruitment costs, and if you can kind of help employees to stay with you more loyally for longer, there's just a win-win for the business anyway. So there are different angles to look at it, but don't be overwhelmed. Find out more. We're happy to speak to anybody after this who might like to find out more, want to have a kind of informal discussion to see and to assess where they're at. We'd be delighted to help.
Oh,
I think
just
to add to that, Mirry, from a purely sort of commercial perspective, we work with a lot of businesses who, every business that we work with is a business that's run for profit. Everyone needs to make a profit. That's why businesses exist, and that's how you keep the business alive, essentially. And in terms of turnover, small and medium-sized B Corps had a turnover increase of 23% in 2023 to 2024, and that was against the national average of 16%. So B Corp businesses do seem to be generating more turnover than the national average. And then I think, like Mirry said, the last thing is, if you are stuck, then get help, because I've worked with B Corps and prospective B Corps for about 5 years now. And a lot of businesses have lost a lot of time and investment in trying to muddle through, getting to the end point, not actually getting through. There's an interesting stat that over half of businesses that submit their applications to B Lab don't certify on their first time. I think it's 52% don't certify on their first time. And if you don't meet the requirements to a certain point when you submit your assessment, you actually get sent back to the start and you have to go through the verification process again, which is more time for your business and essentially more cost. So I'd always advocate, obviously I'm biased, but I would always advocate for people to get support if they're stuck.
Yeah, do it properly the first time. Okay, that makes complete sense. Well, thank you everybody for joining. I hope you have all left with some useful tips and some, a bit clearer on what it is, why it is, and how to do it, depending on which stage you're at. Thank you, Mirry. Thank you, Guy. Thank you, Mia, for adding your various different areas of similar expertise to share with everybody here. As we've said, we will follow with a couple of the slides which will give more detail on these are the impact areas. This is, some of the specifics. There's a lot of information that we've covered, so that will help ground it all. And then really that's it. That's just the final thing, is just if you want to speak to any of the team, please just feel free to get in touch with them, and then they will happily talk through whatever stage you're at. We will be doing, on a completely different note now, we do a series of these webinars. Our next one is on a completely different topic. It's all going to be after the budget. I'm not going to say it'll be a bit drier, but it may be. Who knows? Let's see what happens. But if anybody does want to get in, come and join, we'll be joined by some of our tax experts, who will work out and can digest and share and answer any questions that anybody has after that. So we don't know, it's the end of October, beginning November, I think. We don't know the exact date yet. But please feel free to keep your eyes peeled and come and join us again for that one.
Thank you, Jenny, for having us. It's been great to be here and to just talk about something like the B Corp movement. So thank you so much, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Sounds good. Happy rest of what day is it today?
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Yeah. Happy rest of the week.
Happy rest of Tuesday, everybody. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much.
Bye bye.